This practice problem asks, how would you classify the pi bonds in the following molecule? And if we look at our answer choices real fast, most of our answer choices are either E or Z. So we're going to use the Kahn and Gold-Prelog rules in order to assign E and Z to each of the pi bonds. So let's start with the first one. First, you want to draw your dividing line down the middle, and we're going to compare the left side to the right side. On the left side, if we look at what's directly attached, we have a carbon and a hydrogen. So using the first rule of the Kahn and Gold-Prelog rules, we can say that the methyl group has higher priority because the C has a higher atomic number than the hydrogen that's attached. If we look at the right-hand side, we have two carbons. So there's a tie at the first layer. So next, you're going to look at what's attached as you move away from those carbons. And what we see is that the higher priority goes to this larger R group. And so for the first pi bond, we have two groups on opposite sides of the pi bond. And so that is E, entgegen, which means opposite in German. All right, so our first pi bond is an E case. We can narrow things down right away, crossing off answer choices A, B, and D. One thing I'd like to point out about pi bond number 1 is that we can also classify the first pi bond as a cis molecule because it has two of the same group on the same side. So this is a case where you have an E and a cis pi bond. So cis isn't something that we use in naming consistently when the E versus Z option is available to us. So typically E versus Z, we're going to use in IUPAC naming. Cis is a little bit more simplistic here, but this is kind of one of those cases where you have a pi bond that is classified as E, but it can also be classified as cis. Next, let's take a look at our second pi bond. I'm going to erase all of the groups, all of the drawings on here real fast so that we can take a look at that second pi bond. When we look at the second pi bond, again, we're going to draw our dividing line right down the middle, and we'll compare the left side versus the right side. So on the right side, we have a hydrogen and a carbon. And again, the carbon has a higher atomic number, so that's going to beat the hydrogen. And on the left-hand side, we have a carbon versus a hydrogen. So again here, two groups that are on opposite sides of the pi bond. So this is also an E case. So on the left-hand side, we had E, and on the for the first pi bond, and on the second pi bond that's on the right-hand side of the molecule, pi bond 2, we also have E. So that means that our answer is C.